Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. With the offseason almost wrapping up, spring training coming to an end, we're going to take a look back at all of the moves the Toronto Blue Jays have made and some that they didn't, and we're going to give them a ranking and see where they fall.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. As you guys know, we do episodes every day covering the Toronto Blue Jays news, information, speculation. You can find me on Twitter, Braden5E Wasco, Carter, and on Twitter at CarterFirst2. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button as well. We notice a lot of you guys aren't subscribed as we sort of look through the analytics. Of course, we're sort of getting pumped up. The season's nearly here, and there's been a lot of moves made. And I think we haven't done like a full recap, full look back and ranking of all these moves that the Blue Jays have made, Carter. So we're going to get into that today and just a huge episode because there is a lot to go over. Like we really, sometimes don't think that there was a lot of moves made. A lot of things didn't happen, didn't go our way. But at the end of the day, when we look back, there is a lot that the Blue Jays have done to, I don't know about make the roster necessarily better or worse. It's sort of in that middle ground, but we'll go over that today, Carter. Do you want to start us off with number one?
Yeah, number one, it started off the spring training. So I'm so into spring training now with all these baseball games going on. Started off the offseason with a bang and an emotional roller coaster with the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Obviously, the most touted free agent in a very long time, debatably ever, because Shohei Ohtani, nobody has been able to throw up the pitching numbers that he does, as well as hitting 40-plus home runs every single year. So the Blue Jays tried to throw the bag at him. They did offer him around $700 million. At the end of the day, he wanted to go to the Dodgers. I mean, when you're looking at the two cities, you got Cali, that's warm all year round, all these celebrities there. And then you got Toronto, beautiful city, but it gets pretty cold here, so you got to understand it. It's just the way this Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes went down kind of left sour taste in all of Blue Jays fans' mouths. We thought he was coming to Toronto. We thought he was literally on the plane to Toronto. That ended up being false. If it comes out that it was the Dodgers, it always was the Dodgers, got our hopes up, and just a terrible way to start the offseason. It was always going to go downhill from there. Shohei Ohtani was the top, and unfortunately, we did not land him here.
Yeah, and as we know, me and you were sort of on the bit with that, right? This was around the time where we were in talks to start taking over Locked On Blue Jays, and we were dialed right in. We were following Twitter pretty much 24/7. We had our buddy on Twitter as well, who's in a little bit of a different time zone. So when we went to bed, we had him looking at stuff too. And yeah, we were dialed right in. And for a bit there, it felt like, okay, this might happen. Jon Morosi got our hopes up and then stripped it away. I don't want to dog Jon Morosi too much, but I also want to dog Jon Morosi because that was absolutely criminal. But he does good work outside of that. I think he got fed some bad information is what it sounds like. But at the end of the day, he sort of was an enemy of like the country for a while there. I think when he had to retract that statement, it was a very upsetting time. I know it was a Saturday. That Saturday morning, we had like our big Friends Christmas sort of ordeal that we do at the beginning of December. And we wake up, we were in great moods. It was going to be a great day. At that time, we're thinking we might get Shohei Ohtani. We had a champagne bottle ready to pop. The boys were feeling good. And then at about, I don't know what time exactly, if it was 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we get the information that he has signed with the Dodgers. And it sort of put a damper on the whole evening and probably into the next week, because then I had people come up to me and saying, oh, I thought the Blue Jays had him. And so, yeah, it was just, I mean, I think a lot of Blue Jays fans are probably in the same boat that we were, checking flight logs, checking, everything. So at the end of the day, if I had to give this a grade, this whole experience with Shohei Ohtani, the highs were extremely high and the lows were extremely low. But at the end of the day, bad information, number one, and we didn't get the best player in the MLB. So this is an F grade for me.
Yeah, it's a tough way to start the offseason when the best player in baseball decides to stay in California and not come to Canada. I know there's a lot of Jays fans that really truly believed that he was going to come to Canada, but at the end of the day, it was always the Dodgers. But this was the first time that we got a little bit of this excitement of a huge name coming to Toronto. So that was sort of fun in that aspect. Before 2020, I don't think we ever would have been in this conversation with landing a guy like Shohei Ohtani, as touted as this guy was. But when you're looking at it now, if we sign Shohei Ohtani to that 10 years, $700 million deal, Bo or Vlad are walking. We're definitely not keeping both. Maybe even both of them walk. So I'm looking at this from a little bit more of a productive standpoint for the Blue Jays aspect, where they can build more as a team together rather than throw all their money at one person. So I only have this grade as a C- because we did miss out on the best player in baseball. But now we're not throwing the entire bag at Shohei Ohtani. I know Rogers has a ton of money, but they do seem to kind of like to be cheap with it. So if we gave all this money to one player, I'm not sure if we wouldn't have been able to build around him properly. So I'm going to give this a C-. We did miss out on the best player in baseball, but now we do have a lot of other options. Not all of our money's tied into one player for such a long time. And one thing I do want to say, though, the only letter grade that is an F on this podcast for this show, John Morosi, you get an F. I don't care that you got misinformation, tough soak. You got to be better as a reporter. You can't get Blue Jays fans hopes up like that. The hype was here. Yeah. And I've never been so disappointed as a baseball fan in my life. So, yeah, John Morosi, you get an F.
And you know what? I work around some great sports writers and reporters on the daily basis. And to have a guy go out and, specifically spread disinformation. And that's why I always cautioned it, when I was at work and being asked, are they getting them? Are they getting them? And I said, it's Blue Jays are in the conversation, right? Because you never want to be that guy that puts it out there like John Morosi, and then it come back and bite you. And he had a lot of people hating on him, and it's honestly well deserved, because he's been doing this job a long time, and he should have known better than to report something without the confirmation in, right? Yeah, and the whole F grade for me was just over the whole experience, not so much. I mean, yeah, I think it affects the team probably, I don't know, better, because again, I can't say what they would have done or wouldn't have done if they did get him. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, the whole experience for me was just horrible. The ups and downs, the swing, it was fun, but yeah, it was horrible that, of course, we didn't get him. So that's why the F was there for me, just because I remember waking up on that Saturday and thinking, this is the day. And then it got, my feet got taken off from underneath me. So tough look. I want to get into the other guys, because I mean, we could sit here and talk about the Shohei Ohtani deal all day and the disappointments, but there was some good things as well that came out of this year. And so I think I want to start with Justin Turner. $13 million deal, up to 14.5 he could get with incentives and stuff like that. So 1 year, he looks really good. Carter, where do you grade Justin Turner?
Yeah, we've talked about on this podcast before, a veteran presence in this dugout. Bichette was advocating for him to come to Toronto on a podcast. You saw it last year, very consistent with the Red Sox, hit over 20 home runs. Did not seem to regress too much in his career. I know he is getting up there in age. He's around 39 years old. But a 1 year deal, low risk for a veteran guy that's talented, a guy that's going to be able to mentor some of the young guys on this team. $13 million is not that much, considering we were in $700 million on one guy. I have this grade as a B+. I think it was a great move by the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe we could have got a little bit more in the power department. And the reason I don't have this as an A or higher is because we're in on Shohei Ohtani. And when you compare Shohei Ohtani to Justin Turner, unfortunately, you're going to take the ladder with Shohei Ohtani. But again, the money this is a great deal for Justin Turner. If he can do exactly what he did last season, I'm going to love this deal for the Toronto Blue Jays. And that's why I have it as a B+.
Yep. You know what? I actually had it exactly the same, B+. I think it's not a game-changing move of what a A would be necessarily, or, an A+. It's just it's just a very solid move that helps this team build towards the future and hopefully towards a deeper playoff run. And I think Justin Turner fits that bill exactly. So at the end of the day, yeah, B+. That's a great. I think that's exactly where he needs to be.
And it looks like the guys are taking him in as home as well. Like, the guys are just embracing the presence of Justin Turner. Doesn't seem like Justin Turner's going in with the mentality that like the players owe him something, like, oh, I've been through in the big leagues for so long. He's taking it with a grain of salt. He knows that he's here to help these younger guys. And it's nice to see that. He's been known to be a huge locker room guy, can mentor all these players. So if I can see this grade going into an A, maybe even an A+, depending on how he plays, you get the experience from Justin Turner. If he can produce on the field, this can be an electric year for him in the middle of the order.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think this is a great place to get him because we needed somebody to fill that DH role on a consistent basis, and him in combination with some of the other guys we're going to talk about could really be just an elite, like, extra power bat, situational guys. It's going to be really solid. But I do want to move on to the next guy, which is sort of a little bit more unproven, and that's Yariel Rodriguez. This one, it was a little bit tough for me, and I had to sort of take a step back because I am excited for him, but he's unproven at the major league level right now. So I gave him a C plus because there is room where he can grow and he can become the player that we need him to be. But right now we haven't seen anything from him. I need to see more, and a lot more. And honestly, over a 5-year deal that he has, 32 million, up to 47.5 million if he's a starter in incentives, and up to 37.5 million if he's a reliever in incentives. So there's a lot of ways we can go with this guy. I just don't necessarily. It's not eye popping. It's not the game changing move. So that's why I have him as a C plus. It's not average. It's above average because there is a lot of potential there. But at the end of the day, this isn't a game changer for me.
For me, I'm a little bit more on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think this was one of the best moves the Toronto Blue Jays made this offseason. You're right. There is a little bit of risk with he hasn't played baseball in a year, but his numbers in Japan are absolutely disgusting. This guy had a 1.15 ERA over 54.2 innings, 60 Ks, only 18 walks. A guy that could be so effective out of the bullpen. We saw in his start, his fastball was getting up close to 97 miles an hour. And with these incentives, if you can get Yariel Rodriguez to work up and become a productive, even fourth starter, only paying this guy under $10 million a year, even if all of those incentives hit, is a huge deal for the Toronto Blue Jays. And with MLB starters that are going for 20 million plus right now per year, I think Yariel Rodriguez could be a top 3 pitcher on this team. And you're getting him for a very good deal as well. There is a little bit of risk there. I see him just pitching out of the bullpen this season. And even if you get Yariel Rodriguez for the 32 million over 5 years out of the bullpen, that's only around $6 million a year. I think that's a great deal for the Blue Jays. I think he's going to be a slow ramp up. We might not see the production this year, but I think overall, out of his whole tenure with the Blue Jays, he is going to be very effective for this team. And that's why I have him actually as a letter A grade. I think this is going to be one of the best moves the Toronto Blue Jays made this offseason.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. We're a little bit on the different side, and my C plus only comes in is because I haven't seen him play. I've seen nothing of him, it really outside of the little bit that we have. It's pretty minimal. And again, it's not against complete big league talent. And that's what a little bit is, it might turn out to be great, but it could be an Alek Manoah situation where it's not looking good at all as well. And then it's like, oh God, okay, what do we do? And that's what I mean. It's very, very unproven, and we're unsure. Could be great, could be bad. That's why he's middle tier for me.
Yeah, if you're looking at just this year, I can definitely see the C plus letter grade working because I don't see a lot out of him this year. I'm just looking at this from the contract in its totality over the 5-year period. I think when we get closer to the end of this deal, this is going to be an absolute bargain for the way he's going to be pitching. His sweeper's absolutely disgusting. I've seen enough. If you can get that fastball consistently at 97, I'm loving this deal.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Then we got a ton more to get into, but we got still two full segments to go with this because there were a lot of moves. Like we said, we were sort of going back and forth like, oh my goodness, they actually did a lot. A lot happened this offseason. So we want to break that all down. This is our big sort of end of the spring training, end of the offseason overview, and we'll continue next.
Today's podcast sponsor is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of betting against thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch their winnings roll in. Test your skills on PrizePicks this season in the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Braden has gotten me into the fantasy sports a little bit more recently. I have been hammering some over-unders on NHL. I usually just go with the point totals. I'm going to go what I have today. I have Connor McMichael with an under 0.5. I think Ovi's going to score today, so I have over 0.5 points there. I have an Alex Tuck under, a Matty Beniers under for points, both of those guys for points, and I got an Owen Power under for points as well. So a lot of unders going on today. You guys can ride with me if you want. I have won the last 2 times, but I mean, I'm just starting out, so the consistency isn't there. We always talk about the Blue Jays small sample size. So you got my small sample betting size. Can't really take too much away from me yet. I got to prove myself still on Prize Picks here. So download Prize Picks today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup of $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit matchup to $100.
So as we're continuing here, we still got a lot of moves to go over, but I want to go into a guy that I think excites all Blue Jays fans when they hear he's returning, and that's Kevin Kiermaier. A 1-year, $10.5 million deal. And for me, this deal is my A deal. This is my letter grade of an A because you know exactly what you're going to get with Kevin Kiermaier. He's going to be an outstanding fielder. He's going to be a difference maker in the field and a guy that can turn over the lineup so well. And if we can see like he's continuing through this spring training here, and if he continues on this path, this deal is going to be an absolute steal for the Blue Jays and a guy that can really, really, you know, it's such an underrated position, that 9 spot of, you know, you go through a couple batters maybe that you don't have the most faith in, but if you have a guy that can flip that order and get a Springer up there to drive in some runs or a Bo or a Vlad, a guy like some guys like that, it really just changes the game, changes the inning that you're in.
Oh, absolutely. Kevin Kiermaier, automatic fan favorite. We talked about it a little bit on our last podcast. Makes an immediate impact on the Toronto Blue Jays, right against the wall, robs a home run, and a very good offensive production season for Kevin Kiermaier as well. Hit around that 265 mark at the 9th spot, like you said, one of the best 9-hole hitters in the league. To bring this guy back, a Gold Glover in center field, always in conversations as one of the best defenders in baseball. For $10.5 million, I think you got to take that. If you can get the exact same production from Kevin Kiermaier as last year, this could be an AA plus signing. I think last year, for what we got him for, it was an A plus signing. And this year, I had him as B plus, but now I've seen him in spring training. I saw him hit a few bombs, got me fired up a little bit. I also have him as an A. Such a good guy, a good morale guy for the dugout. Likes to keep it loose, but also can keep the guys accountable. Great player, great guy. You'll see him all around the community, riding his bike around, as we talked about as well. Just a funny guy to watch on the broadcast. Loves the boys. You can tell he's really a team guy, a player's player. So obviously a great time to bring him back. Can't hate on the deal at all. I got it as an A as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the morale factor, the accountability factor, you'll see him in this, you know, in the media scrum after where he's talking about the game. And if there's something that, you know, he thinks the guy should work on, he's not going to beat around the bush. He's just going to come out and say it, which I think is a big piece to this as well. Just the fact that he's willing to talk about the mistakes that these guys make and himself, right? What he could do better. That's what I love to see. Just the accountability he holds himself to and the team to. He really shows himself as a leader on this team.
Well, he just knows his role as well. He said in multiple interviews that I'm just here to turn over the order for the big guys. He knows that it's his role. He's the 9-hitter. He's embracing it as his career. He's not trying to do too much. He's got his role. He knows that he's got it down. And he's trying to mentor these young guys as well. A guy that's been in the league for a long time, one of the best defenders in the league, as we've said, can help these outfielders, especially guys like you got Daulton Varsho, who doesn't really need a lot of help, but you'll get David Schneider, who's going to be playing left field this year. You got Kevin Kiermaier and Daulton Varsho to reference for that defense. Those are pretty good guys to talk to if you want to learn how to play the outfield. So for that reason and much more, to see his hitting stats, there's so many good things about Kevin Kiermaier. I think this could be honestly an A plus for sure. But the only reason I don't have it as an A plus is because the bat is a little bit limited. You do know what you're going to get out of Kevin Kiermaier. He's not going to hit 300. He's not going to hit 25 home runs, but who knows, after the spring training, maybe he's all of a sudden going to pull 30 out of his back pocket. Don't actually think so, but Kevin Kiermaier, great guy to have on the team. Can't hang on the deal at all.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the exact reasons that you said is why I have him as an A as well. Just the bat is limited, and that's really the only downside that there is to Kevin Kiermaier. The next guy I want to get into is Daniel Vogelbach. 1 year, $2 million deal. Has been absolutely electric this spring training. And I gave him a B grade because I think for what we've seen from him, he's proven to be a really good bat for this team and a guy that we can bring off the bench in bigger situations and possibly hit those big home runs that like he's done against Garrett Cole already this spring training.
Yeah, with these minor league deals, I feel like it's hard to have it under a C because you can't really hate on these guys. If they don't have a good spring training, you just cut them. It's not a big deal for the team at all. So that's why I have Bogey as a B as well. Minor league deal. He's shown that he does have that power. We've needed a bench bat from the left side. He matches left-handed pitching. A guy I can definitely see coming off the bench for the Toronto Blue Jays. Not the most orthodox swing, but you can tell that there is some power in that swing. And when he hits home runs, they're awesome to watch. And then another reason to love Bogey is that he already pissed off Gerrit Cole. So that's automatically, you got to get behind a guy like that. Hopefully Bogey is here in the regular season. I do want to see him. Obviously, we won't see Gerrit Cole for the first month or two of the season. But that Yankees rivalry is going to get a little bit more intense with Bogey there. Hopefully he does a few struts off Gerrit Cole when he gets the opportunity. So that's why I have him as a B as well.
Yeah, exactly. Nail on the head. The Daniel Vogelback getting Gerrit Cole upset. If you guys want to go check that out, I did make a TikTok and Twitter post on that as well. You can check out the video on TikTok at Dialed In or Locked On Jays.
The old one, huh?
Yeah, I brought yeah. Whoa. And then we also have the new Instagram account that we just put up. We'll be posting on there as well. Some videos, some graphics, some stuff we create sort of throughout the season. So check those out. The next guy sort of that I wanted to get into, Carter, was a guy that you brought up and that we've talked about a ton, and that's Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, Cody Bellinger obviously wanted a huge contract, signed a prove-it year with the Chicago Cubs, and did have a pretty good year. Hit 307 with 26 home runs, 97 RBIs. Was one of the luckiest hitters in the league. I believe that's why he didn't get the contract he was looking for. And Scott Boras has kind of been seen to be a little bit greedy this offseason. Got Blake Snell out of contract offer with the Yankees, still unsigned. Matt Chapman was going to get over $100 million from the Toronto Blue Jays, ended up settling with the Giants. So a guy ends up signing 3 years, $80 million with the Cubs. In retrospect, you see this after the Blue Jays made all their moves. I think the Blue Jays could have done this for sure. Not a huge contract for Bellinger, a huge left-handed bat, a team that for their outfield depth isn't really there. You're really relying on your fourth outfielder as being David Schneider, which on the offensive side, not a bad deal. Defensively, unproven, hasn't gotten a lot of experience there. Cody Bellinger really would have solidified that outfield. And for this reason, with the upside included, I have this as being a C-. I think the Blue Jays, in retrospect, again, should have made this deal, but it's hard to tell. You didn't want to wait out for so long with Scott Boras. Didn't want Cody Bellinger to have a chance to miss out on spring training at bats like Matt Chapman has. Like Snell's not going to be able to pitch in spring training from the looks of it. Jordan Montgomery, those guys. So the risk compared to the upside, I wish the Jays would have signed him, but I do understand why the deal didn't get done at the time.
Yeah, again, I'm not super upset about this. I would have loved to have him, but I think the Jays did what they needed to do in spite of not, knowing for sure what was going to happen with him. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm good with rocking with a C-. Another guy I wanted to bring up here quick, Eduardo Escobar. I feel like this one sort of I haven't loved his spring training. He's been okay, but nothing that jumps off the page. And again, minor league deal. It's sort of whatever. I had it as a C-. I was leaning towards the D, but I guess I'll go C- just because it's sort of whatever with the minor league deal.
Yeah, I got it as a D, and I would have had it as an F if it wasn't a minor league deal. Again, the minor league deals don't really matter. It doesn't affect the team too much. Again, would have had it as an F, but it doesn't really matter. Eduardo Escobar his at-bats have kind of looked ridiculous this spring training. Has had a couple of okay ones. He's been getting a little bit better throughout. But with the infield depth on this team and with all of these minor league invites already, I don't see Eduardo Escobar making the team. So that's why I have him as a D.
And one more guy, just before we hit the break here, I wanted to go over is, of course, the big man himself, the man who wanted to come to Toronto and wanted to play baseball. Nobody was giving him a chance. Joey Votto, the guy who in his first major league spring training at bat goes deep and then somehow twists his ankle walking into the dugout. He's a very big character. That's what I'll say. He's got a very big character. I don't really know how to feel about him, but I love him as a ball player, and I think he always has a chance to surprise you. He's so experienced. He's accomplished so much in his career already that, yeah, he's getting older, and yeah, he might not put up the numbers that you need him to necessarily, but then he could be on the opposite side, and he could shock sort of the whole, Blue Jays fan base. So for that reason, I have him as a B+.
I have him as a C plus. I do like the experience there, and you could see some upside from Joey Votto. It would be the power from the left side. Him and Bogey are going to have the very similar roles, so I think that matchup is going to be interesting. He does have that minor league deal. He has been very open about working his way up to the major leagues. Doesn't want anything to be given to him. So a great deal, a great guy to have again, and with all the experience he has, not going to let too many hijinks go in the dugout. A very serious baseball player. So a good guy to kind of keep guys honest in the dugout, maybe keep Vladdy, his mind on the baseball game rather than like throwing seeds in people's ears and stuff like that. So that's why I have Joey Votto as a C plus. Could be higher on these rankings, could definitely be lower as well, depending on how his season goes. But you got to be optimistic about one of the best Canadian baseball players to ever do it.
For sure. And as we look sort of back at all these moves, I think it's time we also look ahead. And, we sort of did that with the whole Locked On crew. As you know, Locked On has launched one of their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channels, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the guys we didn't sign and we decided to move on from because there's a lot to go over there as well. We'll do all that and more next. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro sports leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, of course. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins, which I know, looking at a $5 bet, you're like, oh, do I want to place a $5 bet? Look at the upside. You can get $200 to use on any bets you want. The winnings all go to you, and at the end of the day, you just don't end up keeping that $200. But then everything you win is yours, so it's great. I took full advantage of it. I think, Carter, have you signed up for that yet as well?
I have not yet. I've been going on Prize Picks a lot. FanDuel is a great offer as well, but I've been trying to keep my betting limited to start out. But I can definitely see myself taking advantage of this deal down the road.
Yeah, it's so good. So that's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. So we talked about all the signings we did make. I think it's time to go back and take a look at the guys who we didn't necessarily want to come back or thought they were too expensive. And I think we might as well kick it off with the big man himself, Matt Chapman, who thought that he was worth about $1 billion and got humbled a little bit. And, this situation was tough because I think Matt Chapman did everything defensively that we needed. He didn't necessarily bring the bat. His consistency was all over the map. You never know which Matt Chapman you were going to get at the plate. And it was frustrating to watch. I know me and you had many of talks about Matt Chapman and him not being able. It looks like he was swinging a garden hose out there. I'll take that line from MLB The Show. It was just ridiculous to see. But then he'd get hot and you're thinking, holy, Matt Chapman's back. But it just the consistency he could never find. So for this reason, not keeping Matt Chapman turns out to be a C for me. I think it's pretty much middle of the pack because I think we replaced him with guys that we can ride the hot hand of and whoever's playing well at the time. And we got some good defenders. Biggio's a good defender. IKF's a good defender. Davis Schneider's good enough, I think. Maybe he can take some step forwards in the defensive game as well this season. So yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that can play that position decently, and then might have a more consistency in the the batter's box as well.
Yeah, for a guy that was wanting $30 million per year over 5 years to hit 240, that's a bold ask for Scott Boras and company. He ended up signing a 3-year, $54 million deal with the San Francisco Giants when the Jays offered him a $100+ million deal. So great business, Scott Boras. That makes a lot of sense. This contract, in theory, isn't bad for Matt Chapman. I think that's more in the realm of what he was actually worth. So good on the San Francisco Giants, not for folding to Scott Boras and company with this deal. And I think it kind of made a statement across the league with some of these general managers that they weren't going to overpay for Scott Boras clients. I'm on the boat where I was sick of watching Matt Chapman at bats. Honestly, in like July, after that unreal April, he just looked horrible for the rest of the season at the plate. And with all the depth we do have on this team, we do have a ton of players, like you said, IKF, Davis Schneider, even Justin Turner can be slotted into that third base role. I don't think we're going to be missing on Matt Chapman's bat too much. Yes, the defense will be super nice. Obviously, you can't get much better defense at third base than you can with Matt Chapman. But was it going to be worth paying that $100 million+ contract to Matt Chapman? Probably not. And that's why I have them as having a B+ grade for Matt Chapman not re-signing. I didn't want to see him back whatsoever. I was sick of the bat. This team needs offense, and Matt Chapman was not going to be the guy to deliver.
For sure. And I understand that. I think just in perspective, if you look at, would you rather have 3 guys trying to share a position and 3 guys that are a little bit more unproven, and IKF hasn't been the best hitter either, or Matt Chapman? I think it's sort of on par. And yeah, so I sort of kept it pretty even keel here. But I do understand. I do understand the depth piece and the ride in the hot hand. That's what I do like about it. But at the end of the day, the inconsistency with the guy playing a third might come back to bite us a little bit as well, depending on how this season goes, injury wise, and where Davis Schneider ends up playing, where Biggio, it's all a question mark right now. So that's a little bit why I have it as a C.
Yeah, and taking that into the guy that will be replacing him, IKF, ended up signing him to a 2-year, $15 million deal. A guy that is going to just pretty much give the Blue Jays that replacement defender level. Not going to be too great with the bat. Hit 260 in his career. If he can be around there for IKF the way he plays defense, I don't hate the deal for him. When you compare the amount of money he got, though, to guys like Gio Urshela, who signed a 1-year, like $1.5 million deal when you're paying IKF $7.5 million a year, I'm not really in on the signing in the grand scheme of things. This signing doesn't really allow what we should have been doing, I believe, from last year, is letting the young guys play. This is taking playing time away from guys like Davis Schneider. Addison Barger had a good spring training, unable to be called up because we have so many depth pieces already in the big leagues. You don't want to start his major league clock too early. If IKF can hit his career average, I can see this letter grade going up for me. But I honestly have this as a D. I don't think it's going to shape up too well for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think especially in the second year, I know he does have an opt-out clause. The second year especially is going to be like, this guy, just why do we pay this guy $7.5 million deals? I don't really see the vision here. I think we would have been better off just kind of letting it roll with Davis Schneider, Cavan, Biggio, Justin Turner making spot starts there. So that is why I have IKF as a D.
Yeah, I had minus a C minus here for this one, and that's exactly why. It's we have pieces that can do this, and maybe you realistically do it better than he can on a more consistent basis. So yeah, I wasn't thrilled when this happened. I was sort of okay with it, I guess, because we needed somebody to fill in with not really having a direction of where we were going to go at third base. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. When I look at, like, would I rather have Matt Chapman for a little bit more money or IKF, and especially when the money's not mine, I'm going to take Matt Chapman, or I'd rather see some of these young guys come in and fill the role. So this was sort of just not a good deal. I don't think, I don't understand this at all, but whatever. If we want another guy that can spot start at third base, I guess this is what we have.
It's always nice to have depth, but in the grand scheme of things, if you're looking at that Matt Chapman contract compared to the IKF contract, I much rather have Matt Chapman for 17 million average compared to IKF for 7.5. Yes, you might not have the bat with Matt Chapman and IKF, the upside is way higher for Matt Chapman. You sort of know what IKF's going to be around. He's not going to be horrible. The lows aren't going to be as low for Matt Chapman, but the highs are not going to be nearly as high for IKF compared to Matt Chapman. And I agree with you. I think we should have let the young guys play. I don't really see a spot for this with IKF, especially when you have guys like Ernie Clement and this minor league system that's so good. Yeah. So I didn't really like the IKF signing. Another guy that was kind of playing this middle infield position, a guy that we have talked about numerous times on this podcast, is Whit Merrifield, a guy that had an $18 million option with the Toronto Blue Jays that we obviously declined. Ended up signing with the Philadelphia Phillies a 1-year, $7 million deal with a club option with up to $8 million in 2025 with a $1 million buyout. Brayden, I'm just going to give this one to you to start off. How do you feel about the Blue Jays not bringing back Whit Merrifield?
To be honest with you, I love Whit Merrifield. I love the type of game that he plays as a big utility guy. He can play anywhere you need him to. He could have slotted in as that, fourth outfielder role as well, and played some second base. And we could have, moved Cavan over to third base, and that could have been a pretty solid lineup. And I think I would have been way happier with that. So for me, this not getting Whit Merrifield back is sort of a D for me. I just think that he's way more useful. I'd rather have Whit Merrifield back than Matt Chapman, just for the fact that he can play everywhere, and we allow Cavan Biggio to move over. We can put Whit Merrifield in the outfield. We can move David Schneider too. It gives us tons of options. And honestly, I'd rather have him over IKF as well.
Yeah, for me, declining that $18 million option is an A+. There's no reason you have to pay Whit Merrifield that much.
Yeah.
As for when you look at it again, in retrospect, with the deal he signed with the Phillies, $7 million is not a lot for Whit Merrifield. He's going to be playing better baseball than $7 million is worth. However, for me, saying that, again, you look at this minor league roster, you're looking at guys like Ernie Clement, you're looking at guys like David Schneider, Cavan Biggio, who played really good baseball at the end of the year. Whit Merrifield is getting to the end of his career, and you want to be able to give these younger guys an opportunity to play baseball. I want to see Ernie Clement slotted in at that second base spot for opening day, considering how good he has been in spring training. If you bring back Whit Merrifield, that's not an opportunity you have. You only have this third base role. You probably don't see David Schneider as much. You're not going to see Cavan Biggio as much. For this reason, I have not bringing Whit Merrifield back still, even with the contract, as a B+. I want to see these young guys play. I want to see these guys make a difference on the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a lot easier for me and a lot better of a feeling when you have some homegrown talent go all the way through the minor leagues and make a huge impact on the Toronto Blue Jays roster. So for that reason, I want to see the young guys play. I want to see a new era of baseball per se in Toronto. And for that reason, I have Whit Merrifield not re-signing with the Toronto Blue Jays as an A.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. I look at this as we have a so many year window, and Ernie Clement has lots of years to play left. And in the sense of, if we're going to win now, what we should have done is, okay, we don't want to re-sign Matt Chapman for the amount that we were going to have to pay him. Fair enough. But if we could have brought back Whit Merrifield at $8 or $9 million a year and slotted him in as a guy that's proven, very, very solid defender that can move up and down the lineup throughout the entire lineup, wherever you need him to play pretty much, and give some sort of direction to guys like David Schneider and Ernie Clement throughout this year, even if it was a 1-year deal, which I know he didn't probably want, but at the end of the day, I think that could have worked well for the Jays. And I don't know. I just don't know if we're going to rely on Ernie Clement and David Schneider, two guys, well, especially David Schneider, who went through a little bit of a hard spell at the end of last year. I think if we want to make a playoff run, Whit Merrifield is a guy that, could have made the difference.
At some point, you're going to have to rely on your minor league talent. And Ernie Clement, as we've covered on this podcast, has given no reason for you to doubt him whatsoever in the last couple of seasons here. And you have David Schneider, yes, a little bit more unproven. You have Cavan Biggio. At this point, we did already have IKF in the situation. So that third base role was sort of covered. I just think there would have been too much going on with this infield if we bring Whit Merrifield back. And I do think the upside for some of these players is a lot higher than Whit Merrifield's is. Yes, you get the veteran presence back. His fielding kind of went downhill at the end of the year as well last year. I almost would rather have Ernie Clement's defense at second base than Whit Merrifield's. I think he's probably a better defender than David Schneider, but I'm taking the offensive upside. Whit Merrifield's never going to hit for power. You have a little bit of power coming from Ernie Clement in spring training. You got a lot of power coming from David Schneider all of last season. Did have a down stint at the end of the year. So clearly we're on a little bit of different spectrums on this issue here, but that's how Blue Jays fans are. We're not always going to agree. I know there's been people in the comments that have been disagreeing with us. Lots of people have been agreeing with us too, and that's why it's fun to have these debates sometimes. I'm on the side where I want the younger guys to play. It looks like you're like more worried about the window, which I do understand. The Blue Jays window is coming to an end quickly, but we'll have to see. It's going to be fun to come back to these rankings and see who is right. Maybe I can throw some shots at you throughout the year when Ernie Clement is hitting 400 in the month of May.
Well,
we'll see what happens.
And they could be. And that's the good part about the young talent. And I'm sort of at the mindset of we have to sort of pick a direction, right? And we're not really picking a direction with the IKF signing. And I think the IKF signing throughout this whole thing screwed everything up. Because it's either we don't sign IKF, then we have room to put somebody at 3 and room to put somebody at 2. And, if it's one of those younger players. Now we're in a situation where we still might not have room for Ernie Clement or Davis Schneider because we have Cavan Biggio at 2 and now IKF at 3. And what, we're going to spot start everybody? So in my thinking, if with the IKF signing, this is worse than us just signing Whit Merrifield to be our everyday second baseman and then putting Cavan Biggio at 3. This is a complete, I think, this IKF signing messed everything up in the offseason. If this didn't happen, this gives the Blue Jays way more option. And that's why I think if I look back and I say, what would I rather have? Would I rather have IKF on this team taking up a third base spot? Or would I rather have Whit Merrifield that opens up that third base side for Cavan Biggio to take over? I'd much rather have that.
Oh, absolutely. I much rather have Whit Merrifield over IKF as well. And I think you're right. If you look at it from that point, if you knew what Whit Merrifield was going to sign for a cheaper deal than IKF, believe it or not, don't know how that happened. But yeah, with IKF, you're limiting your offensive upside. He's going to provide you the defense, but we've seen good defense on this baseball team. It doesn't matter how good your defense is when you're scoring 1 run, if that, in a playoff game. You got 1 run in 2 games last season in the playoffs. And we have been talking about this for a while, so I'm going to move on after this. But we'll leave it at that. Probably should have kept Whit Merrifield over IKF, but I do want to see the young guys play, and they would have had the opportunity to play at third base if we didn't sign IKF, and I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
These next few guys we have talked about a lot, so there's really only one more guy I really want to get into as this podcast is going a little bit long here again. Seems like we've been talking quite a bit recently with how close we're getting to spring training. Just I think the boys are getting a little bit fired up here. So we've already talked about Jordan Hicks. I'm just going to give him my letter grade here. It's a C, kind of whatever. Our bullpen's good enough without him. Tough to not bring him back, a guy that's throwing over 100 miles per hour. But when you look at the bullpen in retrospect, I don't think we're going to miss Jordan Hicks too much.
Yep, same with me. I had him as a C just for the fact that, always nice to have another arm. But at the end of the day, our bullpen's very good. I'm not worried about our pitching whatsoever.
Brandon Belt, I also have as a C. I'm kind of whatever with this. Justin Turner, you probably get a better bat with him anyway. Has a very similar role to Brandon Belt. So I definitely could have had this as a C-. I think I'm talking myself into a C- a little bit here with this, but I'd rather have Justin Turner over Brandon Belt. It will be tough to see. I love Brandon Belt's personality. It was so fun to watch him play baseball and just how he was joking around in the dugout. But the Blue Jays have made the transition to a more serious baseball team. I think Justin Turner will provide that more than Brandon Belt will. And I'm going to switch my grade actually on this podcast. I'm going to switch it to a C-.
Okay, see, I'm the opposite. I think we have different mindsets on Brandon Belt as well, and I don't mind the move on to Justin Turner whatsoever. So I think not bringing Brandon Belt back for me is a B+.
And I just realized I messed that up. I actually meant a C+ rather than the C- there. I could definitely see Brandon Belt not bringing him back being beneficial for the Blue Jays. Going towards a more serious baseball team here. Another guy, Hyun-Jin Ryu. Not bringing him back, not really a spot for him on this roster. I have not bringing him back as a B+. I'm happy for him going back to his original team in South Korea. A huge deal for him. I think it's like a 14-year deal. So good for Hyun-Jin Ryu for playing until he's a million years old in the South Korea Baseball League. How do you feel about that signing?
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way. I mean, it's always nice to have extra pitching, like we talked about the Jordan Hicks thing, but I don't think there was any, moving forward with Hyun-Jin Ryu. So I have that as a B+ as well.
And the last guy that I have on my list, I don't think we're forgetting anyone, but it is Adam Simber. This guy's a bum. I'm sorry. He's a bum. Didn't want to see this guy at all with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think the MLB is getting away from an era where these submarine pitchers that are throwing 84 fastballs down the middle is not going to work anymore in the league. If you're not throwing 94, 95, you're throwing slow at an MLB standard, which is ridiculous to say. But I think Adam Simber, thank God he moved on. I was tired of watching him. He was giving up moon balls to Aaron Judge. Seemed like every time he would go against him. Did have a good season with the Toronto Blue Jays in 2021, and he was decent in 2022 as well. But it was just time to move on from Adam Simber.
Yep, this is an A+ for me. Send that guy to the moon. He can go talk to Bradley Zimmer somewhere, and those two can have a picnic. This is good enough. Move on. Call it a day. We don't have to talk about Adam Simber ever again, hopefully.
And unfortunately for him, he's going to go rot in Los Angeles with the Angels with Mike Trout. Probably not going to make the playoffs again. Interesting franchise, to say the least, for the Angels. And looking at that franchise makes me happy to be a Blue Jays fan, to be honest.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe one day we'll have to talk about that. Just the whole thing about wasting Mike Trout's career, honestly, and he's sort of doing it to himself, which is the worst part for a guy that came out as one of the best baseball players of all time to be rotting away with the Angels is just a brutal look, I think, for the MLB in general.
Yeah, absolutely. It is nice to live in Los Angeles. You definitely can't go wrong there. Again, we talked about Shohei Ohtani moving there, or staying there rather. Can't hate on it. For baseball, for that team, definitely different situations when you look at the Dodgers and the Angels. Saying that, though, we have gone pretty long on this podcast. I think one of our longest ones ever. Thank you guys for watching, obviously. Let us know in the comments section if you guys do like these longer podcasts or if you do prefer them being around the half an hour mark. We're pretty much good with either. We can get talking in some tangents, but we are just so passionate about Blue Jays baseball that we have no problem talking about this for 3 hours rather than half an hour. So let us know in the comment section how you feel. Thank you guys for watching. As I said, make sure you guys leave subscribe, as 85% of you guys are not subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you guys are watching every day anyway, you might as well subscribe. It helps us out a ton. And just before we do head out, I wanted to throw it over to our Locked On 24/7 streaming channel. So much offseason moves going on. Playoff pushes are being made in the NHL and NBA. Whatever you need, we have our experts covering this 24/7. You might see us on that channel as well. So just go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe.